let's then talk about Oppenheimer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the other half of Barbenheimer. You went and saw it. What did you think about I almost said Barbie. What did you think about Oppenheimer?
So I had a screw up with the tickets and I accidentally got the wrong ticket date, which I don't even know how it happened. So I was supposed to go at 10:30 and there were no more seats. And they were like, you got this for the wrong date. Like, you can come back next Friday. And I was like, I got a seat today. So I had to wait in the movie theater until 11:15 to go see it, which is why I ended up going to such a late show time. Um, the theater was full. The 10:30, no more seats. 11:15, we just barely got seats. IMAX is loud. Christopher Nolan really likes to go in with a bang. I think it was Cillian Murphy's best acting overall. I thought it was a great story. I thought and it's fairly historically accurate from what I'm reading. As
It's
far
based on the
as
book. I forget the name of the book, but it's based on, and the book itself, I think, won a Pulitzer Prize or something.
Mhm.
It was, yeah. So,
Yeah,
I think,
so
yeah.
I mean, you get to see so many historical, big scientific players in this movie, and there are parts of it that I thought were really beautiful. I think Emily Blunt did a great job. I was floored. Florence Pugh, maybe they underused her. I don't know. I feel like she could have done a little bit more in the storyline overall. But overall, Cillian Murphy killed it. It was a great story. I think Christopher Nolan's editing was riveting. I was like, he does that thing where he sort of goes back and forth in the timeline and you have to sort of piece it together. The only thing that confused me was the very end. So we can go over what you feel about the movie, and then we can maybe compare that, because the very end, like the last 2 minutes of the storyline, screw up the timeline.
It does. It's sort okay. So Christopher Nolan is known for doing these non-chronological sort of
Yeah.
stories, the non-linear storytelling, and that's something which I think that's why like Inception and the Dark Knight trilogy, even like those
In
movies, in those
Inception,
movies
it
it
made
flows more
sense.
naturally.
But this made less sense
Yeah,
because everything that you see in the timeline, it keeps sort of going back and forth, right? And it all fits until the very last one. But that day in the timeline happened before he ever started making the bomb. And so it was like, wait, what? Did I miss something? Did I mishear something? I was very confused.
because um doesn't that scene, so was that scene, but who hires him as the project director? That's Matt Damon's character after he's accepted
Yeah.
the role at the university. So before,
But he was already
yeah,
in that
yeah.
role at Princeton and living
Hmm.
in that house, and that's how I double checked, because when they get in an argument after the fact, they're in that house still and they're moving away from that house. So unless I misunderstood something about the timeline, that day that he talks to
Yeah.
Einstein at the lake happened before he went to go start making the bomb, correct?
I pretty sure, because remember when they at the end of the conversation, in the last scene of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
when they're kind of show in detail what they talked about, he mentions to him, remember the piece of paper that he brought to him
Yeah.
for double checking the calculation. I think that's what you're talking. So
Yeah.
so that to me shows that that particular scene took place after they had made the bomb and the bomb was dropped already.
Okay, so
So
maybe I just need to rewatch the movie.
that's because I had to think about that too, because but
Yeah.
that was because in the moment, just kind of just taking it in, that's how I knew that scene, it took place before the Senate hearing, but it took place after the
After the
bomb was
bomb.
made in Los Alamos and they dropped it. So it was,
But then you see that scene before you see any of the rest of it. Okay, understood.
yeah.
So I
So
did. I just
Christopher Nolan
misplaced the
has a really
timeline.
good habit of
Yeah.
start kind of stating something early and then setting it up and then paying it off in the best way imaginable, like towards the end. He
So, and
does
I
it in
will
all of
I
his
will tell
movies.
you, this is definitely a movie that makes you think. You really have to think. I was very tired, you guys, very tired. obviously very engaged, but I think my brain maybe was like moving a little too slow to put it all together. Really great movie, makes you think. I do think that this is, again, like Tenet and Inception, you have to go see it twice. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't fully understand Inception and all of its different moving parts until I saw it the second time. And I feel like this is going to be one of those movies that we're going to keep catching new stuff every time we go see it. So honestly, I might go see it again. I might wait until it comes out though, like at home. But yeah, good movie.
Yeah,
I think it's phenomenal.
I completely agree with you. The movie is, I mentioned this I think before the show or even earlier in the show, that it's one of Christopher Nolan's crowning achievements in a career that's filled with them. Like, I still think, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, that The Dark Knight is still his best film ever. And then, after that, you have things like, I think, Inception and Interstellar rank really, really high on my list. I particularly love Interstellar because of like how it deals with concepts in physics in a way that is, from a storytelling perspective, just genius, but also it doesn't discount the scientific accuracy of those concepts.
And I
like,
think
a lot
that's
of movies
also what
can't do that.
Yeah, I think that's what I love about Christopher Nolan. He sort of dives into these fully like scientific eras that I don't think he has any background in, right?
But he doesn't, but he does his research.
He has.
Yeah.
I have failed to see like big inaccuracies, which make me love it even more because he makes a beautiful story out of like life and truth and like science, which I think is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, this is something where he's always kept the priority on getting the scientific accuracy right and telling a good story, a story that's grounded in characters and just good storytelling fundamentals. Early in his career, Jonathan Nolan, his brother, was writing a lot of his movies, and then, or they would collaborate. And then as he has gone on, he started to just write the movies himself. Like, at the end of this movie, I noticed like it said written and directed for the screen for film by Christopher Nolan. And that's something where I think, for Interstellar, for example, he had Kip Thorne, who is a well-renowned physicist, one of the well-known names of the modern era of physics, who was his big scientific advisor for Interstellar and dealing with concepts with like general relativity and everything that they do. Yeah. In this movie, I think, he went in and did the research. Obviously, it's based on a book. I think this is probably the first adapted screenplay he's ever written and directed, because he's generally like, either going off historical events like, what we did in Dunkirk. And Dunkirk also, a linear event, but the way that he made his movie story play out.
I haven't seen Dunkirk. That's the one big movie of his that I haven't seen. So maybe that's my homework.
Because both of these movies are based on real life events, and uniquely so, because none of his other movies are based on real life events, particularly very well-known real life events involving some very well-known people from the real world. There's a lot of comparisons in between how Oppenheimer and Dunkirk are structured in terms of like telling, I think, like 3 separate storylines that are all connected but shown in this non-linear way, in a way that feels poetic. And also, these are stories that not within any filmmaker's hand, or in most filmmakers' hands, they wouldn't be able to make these stories feel as engaging as what Christopher Nolan is able to do. Because ultimately, like with Oppenheimer, like, just because what it was impressing, because that's one of the biggest things I like about Christopher Nolan films. So I look for it now because I know he's always going to deliver on this. He has, and I love the rule of threes in filmmaking, like, and that tends to it just has this like quality that it plays better in the human mind. So in this movie, the story is basically about 3 things. It's a story of making of the atom bomb with the Los Alamos, and so we see all of that play out, and that kind of concludes, what feels like around the halfway mark of the movie by the time we get to the end. Although, like, in the moment you're thinking, oh look, there's it, that's it, like now we're done. But no, the whole story, and then like from there, and even though up until that point we have had, was intercutting the sequences of them making the bomb with the Senate hearing for Strauss, and like what's everything that we've been seeing in the personal life of Robert Oppenheimer. And then once the bomb is made, and then after that, we, I think, transition to really like what's going on with the personal life of Oppenheimer, and then the not just the celebratory consequences, but also some of the bad things that Robert Oppenheimer had go through in the post World War II era, and then we really start to focus on the Senate hearing, and then he kind of wraps it all up by the end in a way where, like, I think thematically, the this where we end on the shot of Cillian Murphy, just the terror in his eyes, and then you see like what by that time we have seen that shot a few times, but now we are seeing that shot was really like the vision in his mind. That is the him, at that point. I think the intent is that it's metaphorically true that they did set the world on fire, metaphorically speaking. Like we entered this new age where humans could destroy each other at a moment's notice with just the press of a button, and that's something that was never possible before. And it's just the gravity of that statement. Like I really appreciated that.
I also think that it, getting to see the remorse of someone who had that much power, in a sense, of like creating the bomb, but also to see, I mean, there's just the different parts about it, like to see how Truman basically like threw him away after he created this.
Yeah, he called him a crybaby.
Yeah, literally, like
that's just not.
And I wonder if
cool.
those things are historically accurate, but like to see how the U.S. military kind of like threw him away.
Yeah.
After he did this huge thing for the U.S., right? But like it's this terrifying thing. Like the atom bomb is terrifying. Scientifically, as a scientist, he was very much interested in the science the whole way. But then as you get further and further into the movie, you realize like as a person, he really struggles with what he has created because it is this weapon of mass destruction. And I think they said that they weren't even sure how many people, like they had estimates of like how many people and how many miles would be affected, but based off of the cities that they dropped them on, it killed way more than they thought it was going to.
And the numbers kept going up. They were like, and they were more than their estimates. And even then, and like, it was just, I think remember that one scene where one of the, I don't know if it's one of the politicians or one of the cabinet members at that time, who's like, oh, we're going to take that one city from consideration because it's holds cultural
because it's where we vacation.
And because of vacation. Which was like, it got a chuckle out in the moment from the audience in my theater, which I think was meant to be that. But at the same time, it was like this dark humor that, like, how cynical some people in the moment took a decision that really changed the world. And it has, there's many events through our history that have defined the era we live in today. But I think in many ways, the event that kind of changed the world and the world that, I mean, we would have a totally different world today if nuclear energy wasn't a thing. Yeah. Whether it's how we're using it as a weapon, or whether it's how we're using it as a source of energy, or the advancements that it has led to in physics. Yeah. But like the biggest thing beyond that for me was like I was geeking out over this movie because I'm a big like scientific science nerd, kind of a geek thing. So like when they're just like casually bringing in like a Niels Bohr or Werner Heisenberg or like these people, I'm like, oh my god, there's that guy. Oh, I know that scientist. I know his story like from science class or from history class. And it's just, so I was geeking out over this movie in so many ways.
I mean, this really does mention like the top scientists of that time, right? Like we have all of them. And we even get to see Einstein. I was like, oh, but also to see how all of those scientific frontrunners all came together or like apart in some way to lead into the creation of this in itself is like kind of insane. Like, I don't know if there was ever a massive time in history that all of these people would be together.
I mean, like we've seen so many movies about like the space program, right? Like and how big of an achievement, and TV shows like For All Mankind is like an alternate history show, but also there's stuff like The Right Stuff and whether you want the movie or like I think there was a series about it. But there's like when the entire country or the world came together to do something big, that is a cultural moment that is forever going to live in time and has historical significance. So movie, it shows you that it was like this very revolutionary special time in the world
Yeah.
of science where all of these names that we see their names on plaques and buildings at prestigious institutions, they were all alive and working together on something this big.
Yeah.
And then to see the how again, he Christopher Nolan grounds everything in character,
Hmm.
all of his stories. And so to see like how Cillian Murphy played the role of, and then just showing us on screen just like how racked with guilt Robert Oppenheimer was.
Mm.
I mean, to be able to show on screen in any movie or TV show, in any visual medium, something as internal as guilt,
Yeah.
that's difficult. And I mean, there was some, and as well as like just the nuances of his relationship with his wife, or
Hmm.
his lover before that, and just how like he went through that different stages of his life.
Yeah.
I have not, in my out of theater review, I call this movie deeply emotionally affecting because I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen a biopic like be this visceral and this cinematic while also being this personal and this intimate. And that's
Truly
Christopher Nolan's way.
beautiful. Like everything about this movie, I really think that this is going to be like a staple of cinematic history for a long time. And then you have to talk about the cast. Like we've got Cillian Murphy, we have Florence Pugh, who I actually didn't realize was in this movie until I saw her. Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Jack Quaid, Matt Damon. Like it keeps going. Every single person in this movie. I mean, we have Rami Malek in this movie too. Like
And playing like what
every
seems like a relatively
single.
insignificant role until like the third act, and you're like, wait, why did they have Rami Malek playing this like little scientist, and then like he becomes so significant? Yeah,
I mean, truly, like there was not a single person on the screen at any point in time that I was like, I really don't know who that is. Well, I mean, maybe one if I like really think about it, but for the most part, I knew who everyone in this movie was, and everyone played a significance to some extent as far as the story went. Everybody did a great job. I think this was some of Emily Blunt's best acting. The, truly, I don't know if I've ever seen her do a better job of like playing, because she plays essentially like a housewife, right? But she really is Oppenheimer's partner. She really plays this like very strong, but also she's clearly an alcoholic, but she plays that line so well because she's clearly very intelligent. And in the beginning, they tell you that she's a biologist, but you only get that one hint, and then she comes through very strongly in the end with like, I mean, truly, she saves
when
Oppenheimer.
she's in that interrogation, I
Oh my
was like,
gosh.
you go, girl. Like the way she was
Phenomenal.
coming back at Jason Clarke's
Phenomenal.
character. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
That was one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie, was
Yeah.
how that plays out. And you can
It's
see
just,
that where Oppenheimer's sitting behind her saying, yeah, this is the
yeah.
woman who I made the right decision to stick
Yeah.
by her side and for her to stick by my side. Like those are those like relationship defining moments.
Yeah.
And it just like it hit me like really like that was
But
one
also,
of
I
my
feel like
favorite
their
moments.
marriage is so real. Like it shows like the true caveats of a marriage during that time. It was fairly normal for men to cheat on their wives, which look, I'm not in like that's not okay, right? But that was a very normal historical thing during that time. Like their infidelity is like one of the leading causes of divorce, but nobody got divorced in that time. And it shows the true caveats of like being with someone. Obviously, you clearly see like her alcoholism after the baby. Like it, all the caveats of this marriage felt so real, so true, so like full in a way as far as the story was told. And then you have this, like this, truly every segment of this movie, I'm like, wow, like, wow. And I feel like everyone has to go see it, period. It'll make you think, it
Yeah.
makes you like look back at it like, holy crap, they just did such a great job.
And I mentioned earlier that walking out of Barbie, I called that the best movie of the year. And you know what? Right now, I think Barbie is still one of the best movies of the year. But I am willing to, without any hesitations at this point, tell you that Oppenheimer is the best movie of the year. Cillian Murphy is going to get
Yeah,
nominated for the
I feel
on
like he has
Oscar.
to.
Robert Downey Jr., who's I think probably put up his best performance of his career,
Yes.
and the moment and the one of my other favorite moments in the movie that I was like, yes, he's gonna get a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this, or at least be nominated for it, because when you saw that conversation with Aiden Ehrenreich's character and
Mm-hmm.
during their hearing there and off in the room during like lunch break, when he turns like that scene and you realize, oh, he's the bad guy, and oh,
Mm-hmm.
he's been the bad guy, and it's just like the sin. I'm like, you could there was a collective gasp, and then I could feel the audience processing that after, and
Well,
particularly
also
Robert
for
Downey Jr. who
someone who was
was
a staple superhero in the Marvel Universe, my favorite superhero, as an actor, it's really hard to come back from that. Like, once you play a superhero, it's really hard to get out of that typecast. It's really hard to play anything defining outside of that. I mean, Chris Hemsworth, I don't know if we'll ever see him play anything like really defining outside of Thor. I don't know if it'll happen. And then even with Guardians of the Galaxy, like all of those characters, for the most part, up until wait, what is her with a little? She's like the cute little alien. What's her name?
Nebula, yeah.
Nebula. Okay,
Tom
but
Clemente,
the
yeah.
actor, I was shocked when I saw her in Mission Impossible because I didn't even realize it was her, right? But there's so many actors that just don't get the chance. Robert Downey Jr. not only got the chance, but he nailed it. I hated his character. I hated him. From the moment he stepped on the screen, I was like, something about him gives me the ick. And obviously, he ended up being the villain. But he played it so well. I'm like, truly, I cannot say anything bad about any of the acting in this movie.
Yeah,
Not a
the first time
single note.
watching this movie, there's just so many like these pivotal emotional moments that all land so perfectly that it's just
Mm-hmm.
hard to, yeah, I mean, this is the best movie of the year. And I mean, yeah, Robert Downey Jr., like he's tried with like Doolittle, with The Judge, and nothing seems
Yeah.
to have stuck outside the MCU. But I think with this movie, he's opening himself up to doing taking on different kinds of roles that probably will. And then, it's not like every movie that he plays a character like what he's playing here is going to be as
Mm-hmm.
big, because ultimately this is a Christopher Nolan movie, a movie that somehow they made for only $100 million, so it's gonna make like more than
A
enough
lot
money
of
to
money,
break
yeah.
even. It's already like more than broken even. I think it's off to like what, like $300 million global already, and of that
Oh, I
over
didn't
80
even know.
million
Yeah. They
domestic.
had an 80 million here.
Yeah, and then it's 300 plus globally, and that's
Yeah.
just the opening weekend. So I'm like, this movie's already in the green. I mean,
Yeah.
so
It's
yeah,
got a
for everybody involved.
94% Rotten Tomato score, 8.8 on IMDb. Like,
Yep.
everybody is loving this movie,
You know
you
what the
guys.
best thing about Barbenheimer is the fact that everybody agrees that they like it and how much they like it. Because when I
Oh,
look, it is
love.
rare to see this.
Big
It's
love.
so rare to see this. On
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes, Barbie's critic and audience score are both 90%. And for
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer, their critic and audience scores are both 94%. And it's like,
Oh, that's so
Rotten Tomatoes is
great.
getting into it because Barbie's
Yeah.
page has got pink all over. And then when you go to
Oh,
Oppenheimer, they've got black, and everything's
so
their
yeah.
thematic pages. So this is like a full blown phenomenon. I don't think this is people are gonna like all of a sudden be like, oh, opening weekend event and saw it once, don't want to see it again. Because both of these movies, while Oppenheimer is a movie that you will gain more an appreciation for the details on second and third rewatches, Barbie is one of those just watchable movies that you would just have fun going to rewatch. So I think both of these movies will get repeat business, and people will bring their friends, and the word of mouth will only continue to spread. I personally am looking forward to going to see it a second time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's rare that I go see a movie second time in theaters. How about you?
I'm definitely going to go see Barbie on Wednesday. I might wait to rewatch Oppenheimer until I can watch it from home. Surround sound, just watch it from home. I don't know. IMAX was really loud and the movie is really long, you guys. So normally I only give those, like, I get fully immersed in the experience the one time and then I like to watch it from home. But I definitely will see the movie again.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, look. You can't go wrong with either of these movies. Barbenheimer is here. If you guys have not gone and taken part in this global phenomena, then do go see it. I personally would not recommend that you go watch both movies on the same day or back to back. So make time for Oppenheimer, then make time for Barbie, or Barbie and then Oppenheimer, whichever order you go and see it in. If you already saw both, one or the other, just leave us a comment below. Tell us what you thought. Like, did we get like our analysis of like how Oppenheimer ends right? We want to know what you think about like how the timeline kind of fits together in there. What did you think about the stuff in Barbie, like I'm Knuff or I'll beat you any day, which are all references that Angelina you'll understand better after you see the movie. But yeah, hit the like button and subscribe, and keep coming back for more. We're going to be reviewing movies like this the rest of the year. There's still a lot to come. So many good movies to come later this year.